One, does anyone have a question you would like to ask?
Hi, Stuart. It's Tony.
Yes, Tony.
On Monday, you mentioned one of the things you mentioned was how some students of other teachers think they could live in the grace of the guru, which, as you said, is absurd. We have to do our own work, and you help. My question is, how does someone say with a teacher such as yourself until their samadhi?
Some do, some don't, I mean, everybody's different. And look, the grace of the guru is essential if one is going to grow spiritually. It means you open to it, you serve it, you defer to it. There's Ananda, there's love for this person who has given you your life. I mean, it's essential. And you live in the guru's grace, but you don't just sit around and get a spiritual suntan. This is the dangerous thing. You understand? Well, I don't need to do any work on myself because I have the guru's. You know how many people I've met who have told me this? Oh, and it's that you need the guru's grace. You need that connection to grow spiritually, but you never take it for granted. And the best thing you can do in that guru's grace is your inner work to receive profoundly within yourself everything that teacher has to teach you. And that's not just going to come because you're sunbathing in the guru's aura, that's just bullshit, I mean, I went to Tiruvannamala and all these people dressed up like it was a fashion show for, Hindu god there with all these Europeans there. And you can see they're all just basking in something. They're in India, they're dressed in saris, they're dressed in kurtas, but there was no depth. Nobody's doing the work. And I learned this from Rudy when Muktananda was in the United States. And I used to see how hard Rudy used to work. He never took a second of his time with Muktananda for granted. He worked. I mean, you can see it in that movie, Rudy sitting there at the foot of Muktananda and doing his meditation. So he didn't say, oh, the guru is here and I can just serve him fruit and vegetables, and that he really did inner work. And I learned that from him, the essential nature of what it is to be in the presence of a guru and to respect the grace of a guru, not by, taking it for granted and, all this stuff people do, wearing saris and kurtas and robes and walking around being holier than thou, but truly doing your work. Now, most people don't understand that. They would rather live the other way because it's easy. It's really easy. They don't realize that the sweetness of incense comes out of fire. It's not just, if you don't put fire to a stick of incense, you're not going to get sandalwood. You're not going to get, whatever they perfume the incense with. So that's what I'm talking about. The guru's grace is essential, but it's an enormous disservice to your teacher not to do your inner work, not to truly open and deep enough in yourself to receive everything the teacher has to teach. I mean, I get tired of it too. Look, I have, so much comes through me and Shakti and energy and these talks I give. And, a handful of people really take it in depth inside themselves. And, and it gets like, but I'm talking about not living in the guru's grace. I'm talking about taking the guru's grace for granted. Because I'll say it again, the best thing you can do for your teacher is truly work in such great depth that you can take in everything the teacher has to teach. And if you're just sitting around in a sari or a lungi or a kurta or whatever, wearing sandals and smelling from incense, that's not the answer. It's like being an hors d'oeuvre, you want the main meal. Is that clear? I hope so,
Yes, that's getting clearer. And let's say I'm with you till you're samadhi. Just take it from there. Well, I may go before you.
We all might go together. I don't know, whatever karma has in store for us. I don't know. Look, look, Rudy sent me away. Go to Texas. What the hell am I going to do in Texas, Rudy? You're going to teach. I said, but Rudy, you told me I'm not a teacher anymore. Boy, did he get a kick out of that. He said, you're really learning, aren't you, you son of a bitch? I want you to go there and teach. I said, okay, I'm a teacher again. That's living in the guru's grace. You understand? You don't take anything for granted. You don't assume anything. Because ultimately, if you want to have a spiritual life, you got to let go of everything. You can't be protected by any kind of, as I said the other night, white picket fence that you manufacture in your brain. And you have to learn how to interact with life. And I couldn't be around Rudy without doing deep meditation. I'd go into a store, spend an hour, hour and a half there, doing deep inner work with him. A lot of people thought I was crazy. I have a friend who lives in Paris. I thought you were crazy. All you would sit there around him was doing the double. I said I needed to grow. He was my source of energy. What, I'm going to sit there and have a conversation with him? What could what could I possibly have talked to Rudy about? His energy was so powerful. I would just sound like a schmuck trying to talk to him, but I could take in the Shakti, grow because of his presence, and never assume anything. The same way I saw him do it with Muktananda. Couldn't have a conversation with Muktananda. Muktananda didn't speak English, and he didn't speak Hindi. It was all the transmission of Shakti. And he used that transmission to truly surrender everything inside himself. I was with him when he offered Muktananda his business, his money, everything. I'll never forget that. You can have whatever you want, Baba, as long as you replace it with my connection to God. That to me was extraordinary to see that. And he was a very wealthy guy. But that's, anyway, there's no explaining this. It doesn't make sense in terms of the way most people live their lives, but it works. I saw it work with Rudy, and I've seen it work inside myself. And I remember when I ran the ashram, not ashram, the meditation center, the one thing I couldn't stand was people forming cliques. And if you were a member of that clique, you were better than other people. It used to make me crazy. And I used to talk about it a lot. You can't do this. It brings the whole vibration of the meditation group. And maybe it's great that everybody here is living in different parts of the world. And cliques can't be formed, but that's what living in the Guru's grace is. Never taking the teacher for granted. Does anyone else have a question? And this is not easy to do because to do what I'm talking about, you got to let go. You got to surrender. As soon as the ego gets involved, you're a loser. You cannot get in the guru's grace. There has to be total surrender. And that stems from how deeply a need is in a person to get to God. That's where that comes from. And it's not just service. There's service involved, yes, but it's doing your inner work, doing the work. And we have look, I went and sat with Kala Rinpoche, and it was Rudy's meditation that gave me my Tibetan Buddhist education in 3 days. I didn't have to paint tankas, I didn't have to learn Tibetan, I didn't have to go on 5-year retreats. 3 days. And it was this meditation that made it possible for me to draw that level of teachings out of this remarkable man. And the man was practically dying. He was lying in bed with a blanket up to his throat. You know, I've told you the story a million times. But it was this meditation. I remember sitting with a guru in southern Rajasthan named Babaji. And he was a very pretty powerful guy, you know. And I was doing Rudy's meditation. And he knew something was happening. Nobody had ever done that around him. And he gave very profound teachings in the transmission of Shakti. But it was this meditation that drew that out of these gurus. So it's more than service. It's more than service. It's learning to serve and at the same time understanding how profound it is to be able to absorb the teachings that exist in the Guru's grace. Does anyone else have a question?
I'll ask you something, Stuart. Can you talk about transcending the itches, the emotional, just discomfort that comes up during the meditation? You know, because you talk about doing the work, and doing the work is really being able to be present and be in the one point.
Well, look, you know, if you can't let go of an itch, you're going to have a hell of a time getting to God. You know, I mean, if you're focused below the navel, if your mind is centered, your heart is open, Shakti is, and say an itch, well, you know, you just detach yourself from it. A pain, you detach yourself from it. A little discomfort, you detach yourself from it. You have the inner strength to do that. And that will never interfere with your connection to higher energy. But that's your job. You know, your job is not to get involved in the itches and the little pains and the discomforts. And those things are going to always be there. We're always going to have something that comes up. I mean, your job is to get focused in the third chakra. And when you do that, you can detach yourself from the itch. You have the strength not to get caught up in all these little hindrances and problems and disturbances that can manifest during class. That's the key to it, you know, it's building that kind of inner strength. That comes through having the will to keep your attention focused in the chakra below the navel. If you do that, I'm telling you, you know, look, you know, I mean, somebody gets sick, somebody has, you know, gets a pain somewhere, all their attention always goes there. And usually when you keep bringing your mind there and your attention, it gets worse. It doesn't get better. You detach it, you don't feed it with your energy, and it slowly will just go away. I mean, you can heal yourself of a lot of problems that way. I mean it. And sometimes serious problems by learning how to do that. It's where the will comes in. It's where the training comes in. That's why training is so essential, because you learn how to do these things. And at first, this is not easy, but then you keep practicing, and it's amazing how you can just go above everything. I mean, I used to go to the dentist, for God's sake, you know, and I would have him drill my teeth. I needed a cap, and I do it without Novocaine. And it used to freak the dentist out, you know, and I would do this. And I say, no, 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 I want to see if I can go above. And I was able to do that. I used to use it as a meditation exercise. Can I go above that pain? Can I detach myself? I mean, I don't do it anymore, you know, but I did it when I was younger. And it was like some yogic exercise. And it really helped me to get focused inside, stronger inside. And it was amazing how if I went above the pain, because pain has a frequency. And if you build your chakra, you can go above the frequency of the pain and you don't feel the pain. It's just another way of healing yourself of so many little problems that go on inside people. I used to go on the subways in the rush hour. I would do this meditation to see if I could go above, you know, that energy in the subway. You know, I used to do all these little exercises when I was younger to build myself, to see if I could build inner strength and not get swept away in the garbage of the world, you know, so much of it. When I was talking, Winnie called me up, we were talking about that, you know. You have clarity amidst the fog of life. Life is Maya, life is illusion, it's like a dream. But you go through life with clarity because you have developed a system inside yourself that's strong enough to do it. So you see what's real, you see what's not real, not according to your mind, but according to how everything can be used to get closer to God. Even learning the difference between a reality and illusion is another step in one's evolution to God. Does anyone else have a question they would like to ask?
Hi, Stuart. It's Paula. Thank you so much. That was incredibly helpful about rising above the frequency and using that as an exercise to strengthen our within. That was very valuable. Thank you. My first question is, the way we feel and experience the Shakti, the energy you're sending us, can you feel ours?
Yes. And the toughest job I have is that each person I go to is different. Is on a completely different level. So I'm working with some people that are really open. You go to somebody else and they're sitting there like, you know, and somebody else is, you know, a little bit, I mean, everybody's different, and I have to put myself in a different gear with each person that I work with in order to help them get to the next step in their life. Yes, I can feel everybody's energy, and I can see who's working on themselves and who's just sitting here and basking in the Guru's grace. Does anyone else have a question they would like? Okay, I just have an announcement to make. On the 9th of next month, I've talked about this, but I'll say it again. I'm going to be doing an interview with Daniel Costa on Zoom, and we're going to try to put it through social media and places, you know. And mostly it was to promote the translation of my book into Portuguese, you know, but it seems like this book is in both English and Portuguese. So I'm going to send out an invitation to everyone who attends these classes. It's going to be at 11 o'clock, you know, in the morning, my time, Eastern, you know, daylight time. And if you want to come, you're welcome. So I will send out an invitation. The 9th, it's going to be the 9th of August. And then we're going to put it on Facebook, or they're going to do all that. I don't do stuff like that, but they're going to do it on Facebook and Instagram and all these other social media places to try to promote the book a little bit. But, you know, it'll be one of my, Daniel's going to ask me questions and I'll be answering them. It'll be like, you know, it'll be another one of my classes, you know. So if you have time, you can make it, you know, I think it'll be a very good thing. And that's on a Monday morning. Does anyone else have a question?
Stuart, when we're connecting with that, we'll get an invitation link and we'll click at 8 o'clock, for example, Pacific time, and be able to see you live.
You'll get an invite. Same thing as these classes, you'll get an invite.
Okay.
Should we be muted during that? Should we be muted during that interview?
No, because if you have, well, the questions are going to take an hour. And then there'll be a question. No, Daniel's questions will take about an hour, we figured. And then there'll be questions from the audience for another half hour or so.
Stuart, when you were in Texas and you were still studying with Rudy, but you were long distance, how did you work with like keeping that energy fresh when you were mostly in your own space?
You know how I did it? I built 4 ashrams. I had 2 classes a day I was teaching. I was working my ass off to grow and to be worthy of him sending me down there to do what he asked me to do. When he came to Texas, we used to fly from ashram to ashram. I had prison programs going on. You know, he told me, buy that building. I bought the building. Oh, God bless him. He died before he was able to see what we put in that building. He would have gone crazy if he would have seen that restaurant and the success of that restaurant. I worked my ass off. I was working 18 hours a day, teaching in universities, teaching in prisons, teaching in, God knows what I was doing. It was just nonstop, running a business on top of it. You know, I mean, it was insane. But I knew I had to work. I had to work. That was the only way I could sustain my, and I remember we were in India. I used to send them these letters of gratitude and, you know, I love you and gratitude and all. And we were in India and he was supposed to meet this 150-year-old teacher. And this is one of the reasons we were there. And we went to the Himalayas, you know, in the foothills of the Himalayas. And in a meditation class, I never experienced one with him like that. It was so powerful. The whole room was just full, and there was this image of an ancient soul sitting there, transmitting Shakti. And it was, I mean, I worked my ass off. I worked and I worked to be worthy of this incredible. I mean, teaching is not just sitting here and doing this. This is bullshit. You do this because of everything else you do that makes you worthy of doing this. The rest of it is nonsense. I mean it. Because somebody sits there and, stares at you and supposedly it's all nonsense. I mean, when Rudy came to Texas, I had lectures set up for him all over Texas. There were 4 ashrams. I said, this is all yours, Rudy. I don't want this. This is all, I told him that. He said, you wanted this, here it is. I was working like a freaking animal. And Bob Sink was working like a freaking animal. And Tom Tompkins was working like an animal. We worked. And out of that, people grew. I remember once I bought a diesel truck. I had a 40-foot diesel truck parked in our parking lot in the ashram there. And, and Rudy came down and he saw the truck, and one of my students, this truck, and now that's growth. He said, I started to laugh. That's growth. That sound of that truck really turned him on. It just cracked me up.
Yeah, I have one more question with that kind of thing. It has to do with the COVID stuff, and I feel like a lot of COVID was like the sign of like kind of easing off of that rev kind of always going energy. Do you have anything to like in retro update that kind of approach with after the last few years?
Look, to attend these classes is work. It's commitment. A lot of people fall away from this. I must have taken 20, 30 people off the list because they stopped coming to these. This is the work. God has provided this. Take advantage of it. I mean, and do the work, grow, get strong enough to maybe someday you can teach this and build centers and work for God in the world that way. I mean, this right now, this is the work. And COVID made this possible. I mean, I can't have in-person classes. As I told you, look, I even said I will have in-person classes. So far, 2 people showed up for these classes. I mean, it's extraordinary. And 3 people, I'm sorry. And all 3 of them went away. One of them already committed to come back. Another one committed to come live here for a year because of how powerful these classes were. I mean this. Take advantage of what the guru's grace, for God's sake, what is being made available. I can't have a lot of people because I'm living in an apartment here and my daughter's just got a fantastic job and I don't want her to lose the job because there's crowds of people here. But 2, 3 people at a time is fine. Take advantage. And of what is being made available. It's rough today with this COVID thing. And I tell people I want them to be vaccinated. With this Delta thing, I read it's surging all over the country now, and they're expecting 200,000 people a day to catch the disease again. I mean, it's insane. But we have this. We have this. And I will teach in-person classes, and they're hands-on meditation. I do hands-on healing work with people when they come. If people come. But you have to make a reservation because I can't have 9 people. It's too, So what I'm telling you is, and then in your life, you got to, look, I'm not a kid anymore, and I've done my careers and I've made a lot of money in my life and done all that stuff, and I now I'm preparing another book that I want to publish. And I think it's a very good book. It's a little different. It's not a spiritual book. It's more literature. And it's short stories called New York City Moments and other stories. There's always a project. You understand? Always something, a project to continue the growth, my own creative growth. But this time I don't want to publish it through Amazon. I really want to find a publisher for this. So Tom Tompkins, do you have any ideas? Let me know, okay? About doing that. Does anyone else have a question? I mean, I have to do these things because I need the expansion, you know? And COVID has created a lot of monks and nuns out of people, you know? We don't have a lot of social, intercourse and people and groups of people coming together. But you find ways. So how did I do it when I was in Texas? I just described it to you. And I knew somebody once came up to me in Denton and said to me, never forget this. She said, you better stop all this growth here. And I told her, the only thing that scares the shit out of me is becoming like everybody else in this town. That's what I told her. So leave me alone. I said, I will work my way out of here. And I did. I finally worked to the place where I had done whatever I could do there. And it was time to leave. That house, I mean, you think that, how do you think that house got there? I mean, it was my vision, going to the banks, getting the money, taking the pressure on myself, you know, having a vision of building something extraordinary there, and then getting the people together that did it. That house wouldn't have never be in Denton, Texas if I didn't live there. That whole ashram, I mean, everything. And it's not that I need credit. I'm just saying it was all part of me, Stuart. The thing that scared the shit out of me was becoming like the people that lived in Denton, Texas. That scared the shit out of me. And I knew the only way to not become was to grow, was to do extraordinary things with my time in life. And then when Rudy came there, I presented him with ashrams, with prison. He loved the prison program. I had 2 prison programs going. He loved them, going there and with those people, the inmates, and teaching them. And we were flying in a small plane from Austin to Nacogdoches to Dallas to wherever else, you know. And then he told me I wasn't working on it. You're not working on it. I said, Rudy, what the fuck should I do? Buy that building. I said, buy that building. Anyone can do it with money. I bought the building. We built an incredible restaurant there. You know, it was the most successful restaurant that ever existed in Texas. And Bob Sink managed, and he did an incredible job dealing with an impossible business. I mean, I'll never forget telling Bob Baker, you know, I want to build a 3-story Tibetan type house on this property. And he said, and I said, and Bob, you can do the plans for it. You could do the architecture. Thought I was crazy. And then he put himself in seclusion for about 3 months, and he came up with the most extraordinary drawings imaginable. I mean, it was totally professional, totally on the highest level of building. But it was like me, I was like a midwife. The same thing with that statue of Rudy. I was like a midwife with Mike Miller, you know, helping him to give birth to that statue. Anyway, it's a long time ago. God bless.
It's 9 o'clock.
Does anyone else have a question I would like to ask? So Rudy was the guru's, get back. Rudy was the guru's grace. But I wasn't going to sit there and get a spiritual suntan. I knew in order to really get that grace, I had to work at a level in myself and in the world that was unimaginable to me 3 years before I met Rudy. Unimaginable.
Could I ask one more question about that?
Yeah.
So it seems like you're working in a way that's producing probably an incredible amount of tension. And do you feel like that's fine? You just break it down and it's all fuel kind of thing?
Well, the tension was getting big enough to do it. You understand? That was the tension. The tension was having to break myself down to get big enough to do all the things I just described to you. So the tension wasn't me, being crazy and neurotic, and it was me getting past me. And the resistance to that created tension. But in order to do these projects, I had to do that. I had to get past me. And I wasn't such an easy person then, I was not an easy person. Much easier today than I was then. That was the tension. It wasn't neurosis, anxiety, it wasn't fear, it was breaking me, getting big enough inside to buy that building, to build 4 ashrams, to teach all over the place. And then when I was in New York, it was the same thing. Teaching, my life was teaching all over the world, in Brazil and all over Europe. I would make trips. I had meditation groups that I had to support and nurture in Greece, in Zurich, in Paris, in Berlin. And I would make 3-4 trips a year going to these places, making teachers to support these things. I mean, it was unbelievable, but the tension wasn't neurosis. How do I get big enough in myself to do all of this? It's like becoming an octopus, for God's sake. Shiva, with all those arms. And eventually it broke down to where I could do a lot of things without all that tension because my system got big enough to do them. I was no longer resisting them. It was unbelievable, that period of my life. I'm not 40 years old anymore, and I've been through all that. I've done it. Now it's different. Does anyone else have a question they would like to ask? Okay, if there are no more questions, there'll be meditation tomorrow, and I hope to see everybody. And again, God bless you. God bless your questions. Thank you for being here. And I'm just deeply grateful that I can come and share my life with all of you. And I hope it inspires you, you know, to really tap a much deeper and creative source in yourself for working in the world. So bless you all and thank you.
Thank you, Stuart.
What I
Thank
told
you
you
very much, Stuart.
away. It's very powerful stuff.
It is.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Stuart.
Thank you.
You.